Barely a week into 2021 and I already need a drink.
I just said, yes, man, right away, anything.
Okay, so you remember when I did the sourdough whiskey last year? Link right up here if you need a refresher or you want to check it out. So this is actually the same sourdough starter. I just refreshed it today. It's been sitting in my refrigerator for, months. It's still fine. It still smells like bananas and fruit and beer, and it's a really good sourdough starter. I'm very happy that I kept this one. In the last video for the sourdough where I did the blending and the preliminary tasting, I also did some aging for the whiskey on 3 different kinds of wood: charred American chestnut, charred American white oak, and birch, as well as the white spirit. It's been sitting for 4 months almost to the day, and I think it's time we give this stuff a taste and find out how it's coming along. Now, if you don't remember, I named this one the Frankenstein whiskey because the grain bill is a mixture of every kind of sugar and grain that I happen to have in the house at the time. So there was no consistency. It was just this stitched in with that and pieces and parts, and here's a leg and a foot. It came out really tasty with some treacle notes and some grain notes, some dark kind of fruit characters to it as well, and just a tiny hint of banana from the crazy sourdough starter that I used for the fermentation. So we're gonna try the unaged spirit first. Man, it still smells great. So this all went in the jars at 44% ABV. That's a fairly low proof to do any aging. Usually stuff is aged between like 62, 63, and 50 at the low end, just so you can get those flavors out of the wood more effectively, because alcohol is a solvent. I had already proofed it down just so that I had 4 jars to work with to do each of these different aging experiments. So, it is what it is. So before, I got a lot of kind of treacle, golden syrup type of flavors off of it. I get a tiny hint of that now. Yeah, when you swallow and then breathe out, like raisins. Yeah, that treacle flavor, that golden syrup flavor kind of comes back as it warms up on your palate. That's the white spirit. That's our baseline. All these wood types that I used were actually voted on by my patrons. And before I get into the main tasting, let me just go ahead and say a huge thank you to you guys for supporting this channel. I would not be able to do this without you guys, so thank you so much. Thanks for sticking with me. I am grateful. So if you would like to also vote on stuff like this and help me decide what projects I'm going to do in the future, what kinds of wood I'm going to age stuff on, go ahead and check out the link from my Patreon page down in the video description if you would like to check it out. So let's go ahead and start with birch. And take a look at the color on that one. It's nice and light. The thing I like about birch, if you're doing anything that is really sharp and you want to add a little bit of sugariness to it, or you want to add a little bit of sweetness to get some of that kind of barrel candy flavor, throw in some birch. It really has a tendency to throw in some like turbinado kind of sugar notes. Yeah, it's really good. The fruity character, the fruity notes, what I thought was kind of raisiny before, on the nose with the birch, it smells like dried cherries. So that's pretty awesome. Yum. On the palate, it's not dried cherries, it's dried figs, like fig Newtons. I'm still getting cherries on the nose. Now I'm starting to pick up some fig too on the nose, but it's hard to tell. I already got it in my mouth. The golden syrup flavor from the raw spirit is more, I don't know, it feels darker somehow. Not a lot, but just a little. Very soft in the mouth. No jagginess at all. Yeah, I could drink 3 fingers of that, no problem. In my opinion, birch is a must-have wood for all of your future wood aging experiments, because you can kind of rely on it as far as it's not going to put a whole lot of wood character into your spirit, but it's definitely going to sweeten it up, and it's going to brighten up some of those flavors too. Rather than doing the oak, because we've all tasted whiskey that's been aged on oak, let's go with the American Chestnut before we open it, you can see the color's a little bit darker. Hello! Smells really good. This is starting to smell more like a bourbon. It's a little bit darker on the fruit character. Sugars seem darker as well. The fig that I was tasting in the Birch is now more of a prune type flavor than a dried fig. The sugars are definitely darker, and there's some of the wood astringency on the sides of the tongue, some of the tannin, and you never really get those with Birch. As an aging wood, I like it. It definitely adds some character without adding the big wood aroma that you tend to get with oak. I mean, you can pick up some of the wood and some of the char. It's not overpowering, and it's not the first thing you pick up. Before I get too in the weeds, let me try the oak. So there is the oak. This is charred American white oak, and you can see how much darker it is. So there's the chestnut, and there's the oak. There's the birch. So a lot of difference in color. Yeah, with oak, it's wood, smoke, ash. Isn't this the best hobby ever? On the nose, I'm getting a lot of tobacco and the char from the wood, a little bit of wood smoke. And the subtler flavors from the whiskey they're harder to pick out. They're definitely harder to pick out. The sweetness, the dark fruits and stuff like that. It definitely tastes like it's not anywhere close to being done. So 4 months, not long enough, because there's so much upfront tobacco and very little of the sugars. Most of the subtle flavors of the whiskey itself, what made the Frankenstein such a cool whiskey was all these weird flavors that were so upfront and popped so much in the white spirit. To me, that's the benchmark. That's what you should aim for, at least for me. Again, this is my opinion and mine alone. Jesse's a little different and George is a little different. I think I hit the middle of the spectrum, whereas George is a hearts cut guy and Jesse is a flavors that fight you kind of guy. For me, I want it to taste fantastic as a white spirit and then just kind of progress and see what happens as it ages. As a white spirit, you get the grain funk, the sweetness, and the fruits. It's all in there already. What I like about the Birch is that the Birch brings more of that, but it doesn't add any tannin. The American Chestnut also seems to enhance those flavors and allow them to work, allow them to shine and play around in the overall flavor of the spirit. But the oak really just kind of stomped all over them. So I'm sure they'll show up again eventually as I let this one sit on the shelf. My suspicion is that blending the three of these together is going to make something kind of awesome. You know, you've got the tobacco and the dark grungy flavors from the oak and the smoke and the char. Then on this, the chestnut, the natural flavors that are already in the spirit are bigger and darker. And then with the birch, you've got like a little extra barrel candy. I want to say a little maple, a little like almost maple syrupy. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a bourbon drinker. I like bourbons because they're a little bit on the sweeter side. So I'm going to make a little blend here, and I'm going to do 1 part of the oak, 2 parts of the American chestnut, and 1 part of the birch. That's pretty damn good. I don't think that's the right mix. I don't think that's a perfect mix. But, you know, best part of this hobby is playing around with it. So, once I turn the camera off, I'll just have to do some more experimenting until I find the right mix. What a terrible problem to have. So, is this a successful aging experiment? Even though I don't really feel like I want to drink this one all by itself? Well, yeah, because I can blend it into anything. I could blend this into a rum if I wanted to, you know, or an apple brandy. This is your hobby. You're making spirits to taste the way you want them to. You may taste this and think it's fantastic, and then taste the birch and be like, get that syrupy crap out of here. But that's fine. because you're making it for yourself, not for me. So play around with these. If you want to check out the guy who supplies me with the wood for my aging projects, I'll put the link down in the video description. It's Barrel Charwood Products. He sends out the products fast, his prices are good, and the quality of everything is really good. And if you have questions, just email him. Ken is a square deal dude. One of the points I made in the sourdough whiskey video was that the recipe that I did was really wonky because it was all those weird products that you normally wouldn't use in a whiskey. And then also you have the random factor of the sourdough because it changes over time. You know, it's always going to be a little bit different. But because the white spirit is so delicious to me, I would recommend trying this one. A lot of times we have a tendency to stick with pale malts and stuff that's just kind of standard, like they do in the industry. But we don't have to. That's not a restriction that we have. I think this whiskey proves that you can throw roasted malts, toasted malts, crystal malts into your grain bill and get something really special that nobody else has. Stuff that you will never find on the shelf because nobody does that. So get more creative. Play around. I'm currently malting like 15 pounds of barley so that I can keep doing experiments like this. You know what? Down in the comments section, do me a favor. Give me a suggestion on a type of specialty malt to throw into a grain, to an all-grain whiskey. Right now I have Special B, caramel malt, chocolate malt, Munich malt, and pale malt. Those are the ones that I know how to do. If you've got some other ones, post them down in the comments section down below, and eventually I'm going to build a grain bill around some of these suggestions. Patrons always get first dibs when it comes to votes like this, but I always welcome your suggestions because over the years, you guys have given me hundreds of ideas. So thank you. If this encouraged you to try some new things with your grain bills or try out some different styles of wood rather than just sticking with oak, do me a favor and hit the like button because it really helps out the channel. Lets me know that I'm making good content that you enjoy. And it lets YouTube know that you enjoy this content. And if you want to see what I'm going to do next time, it's definitely going to be interesting. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button right down here and the little bell icon right next to it so that you can get notified when I post my next video. And if you have any questions or comments, post them in the comments section down below. Thanks for watching. Talk at you later.